Good afternoon to everyone. At this time, we would like to call to order our CPS Energy Board of Trustees meeting to be held on January 30th, 2023 at 1 p.m. Ms. Ramirez, would you please confirm the quorum?
Yes, sir. We have Vice Chair Gonzalez, Trustee Steen, Trustee Romero, and yourself. We have a quorum.
Thank you. At this time, we will bring up Ms. Lindsay for the safety message, invocation, and pledge of allegiance.
Good afternoon, Chair Mackey, trustees. First, we wanted to review the evacuation procedures so that we're prepared to be safe in the event of an emergency. If you hear the fire alarm, follow the instructions announced through the PA system. If asked to evacuate, use the glass doors exiting out the boardroom to the outside. If that door is blocked, use the back door. Verbally alert others in the room and evacuate, then move to the main parking lot in front of the building or the AT&T parking lot over the McCullough and Brooklyn Bridge. In the event of a situation like this, our security team will be monitoring the situation and will notify the appropriate emergency services and team members. We also have employees nearby who are trained to administer first aid if needed. Safety is a top priority here at CPS Energy, and while we hope this information is never needed, we want to be sure we're always ready. Will you please stand with me for an invocation? For a quiet moment, I invite you to express gratitude for our health, our families, and our friends, and for the opportunity to come together as a community today. We honor our trustees for the responsibility that they bear. We wish them success today in making decisions with wisdom and humility. We are reminded that we are all good stewards acting on behalf of our customers. May we accomplish our goals together with that singular purpose in mind. Now please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Yeah.
It's like singing. We're not in all chorus here. Let's do it.
At this time, we'd like to move to item number 3, public comments.
Good afternoon. For this meeting, we have 10 speakers. Each speaker will have 2 minutes to speak, and Thomas will cue the timer for us. Our first speaker today is Raymond Zavala, followed by Betty Eckery.
Thank you for having me here. I have some concerns with the going green. As you all well know, that we do own part of a nuclear power plant, and going green seems like a good idea. However, you're not thinking about the residue that's caused by going green. For example, I'll give you a good one. And I told this to the Mayor Castro back then and Cheryl Scully back then. The nuclear fuel rods that we use for our part ownership in the nuclear power plant, once they're used up, they have to be removed and sent somewhere else. The life expectancy of a fuel rod dies in half-lives. So right now, currently, from what I understand, we are burying these rods out in West Texas. There's a clear and present danger to that. We keep adding more fuel rods, what are we going to do? And now we want to go green by shutting down the coal plants. About 5 of your CEOs ago assured me that there was a cleaner burning coal coming out of Colorado that CPS was purchasing. Why are we going to deviate from something that works to something that is unknown? My concern is not for myself. I'm 71 years old. My life is already 3/4 of the way used up. But what about my grandchildren and great-grandchildren? They live here. And it's just not my family, it's all your families. The fallacy is that we're never going to get old. We don't have to be concerned about that. Somebody at the top will take care of us. I hope that you will take my words in anticipation and do something about it. Thank you.
Thank you for your input. Our next speaker is Betty Eckery, followed by Mike O'Donnell. Thank you, sir. Our next speaker is Mike O'Donnell, followed by Jack Finger.
Good afternoon. My name is Mike O'Donnell, a San Antonio resident. My main point, I submit that prematurely eliminating all coal-burning capacity at the Spruce plant is simply short-sighted. Yes, perhaps convert Spruce 2 to natural gas, but please, at the very least, for the foreseeable future, mothball Spruce 1's coal-burning capabilities for a rainy day. Why would we want to save Spruce 1 for a rainy day? My answer is, look at Nord Stream 1 and 2. Both of these modern pipelines were suspiciously destroyed 4 months ago. So what is happening now? Under duress, countries in Europe, Germany, Austria, the Netherlands, and Italy are reopening mothballed coal-fueled power stations. What does that have to do with San Antonio? Current news reports indicate we now find ourselves faced with the risk of a nuclear exchange with Russia. While we all hope this never transpires, it would be unwise not to plan for such a contingency. Ditto for possible natural disasters or terrorist attacks. I ask you, should we be so reckless as to throw out our coal-burning capability spare tire on a maybe that all will go well indefinitely? Therefore, I plead with you, distinguished CPS board members, please exercise prudence. Please do not prematurely remove all coal-based production capacity from Spruce 1. Finally, as the God of the Bible says in his word, while the earth remaineth, seed time and harvest, and cold and heat, and summer and winter, and day and night shall not cease. Thank you.
Thank you for your input. Our next speaker is Jack Finger, followed by Paul James.
Mr. Chairman and other members of the CPS board, for the record, my name is Jack M. Finger. Yes, I'm going to chime in with the issues that the others have mentioned, but you got some deeper problems here. I mean, this specially called meeting, I'm sorry, it really kind of borders, the notice of this kind of borders on deception, secrecy. And why I say that? Because, well, for one thing, was this specially called meeting on the calendar as of a month or so ago? I don't think it was. The idea that there is a 3 days advance notice on this, well, I'm sorry, that's what the state requires you to do. I don't, in view of CPS's chicanery here, I don't see you trying to give the public even that. Why? Because it just wasn't, I didn't see it on the calendar. You say you have it maybe posted on or mentioned at some of your previous board meetings. Well, I'm sorry, ratepayers should be allowed a little bit more time on that notice on that your January 30th meeting, January 23rd meeting was going to be posted some time ago, and for the issues that you were going to present there. And the fact that you only offered 2 minutes for our citizens to speak, when at least at Mayor Nuremberg City Council meetings, you get at least 3. What an insult. Yes. And yes, the issues that you already acted upon, your sources for energy, quite frankly, the coal-fired powered plants, the idea you're getting rid of those, I don't want to say that's stupid, but it's stupid. You shouldn't have done that. You're going to be needing those coal-fired power plants in view of the wind which doesn't blow and the sun that doesn't always shine. Thank you.
Thank you for your input. Our next speaker is Paul James, followed by Denise Gutierrez Homer.
Good afternoon, everyone. Trustees, good afternoon, everyone gathered. My name is Paul James. I'm a chemical and natural gas engineer. I found residency in San Antonio during the Eagleford shale boom, and I've had the privilege of working throughout Texas and the neighboring states, helping to cultivate natural gas resources. I understand that last hearing, and I wasn't here because I'm an energy worker as well, that you guys voted on the P2 as the preferred option for the upcoming natural gas, upcoming energy portfolio that you wanted to select. I think the P2 is a rational decision considering the other ones that was available. However, I do urge caution with the assortment of wind that was increased in that. I work in South Texas, and I can tell you that's where a lot of the local wind energy is to this market. That's not always available, even in a place like that, Taft or Mathis area, where you're seeing a lot of the windmill cultivation. I would urge for further consideration in using natural gas and depending on it because of the proximity of natural gas resources in the Dilley area, Parasol, Fowlerton, Campbellton, Karn City, Kennedy area. I think that we have local partners in the industry that are headquartered, based, and operate in San Antonio, and we could leverage those relationships for the benefit and the cost savings of our constituents. I do live in Dr. Francine Romero's district, so I would welcome the opportunity to speak with you further on that. And thank you all again for this meeting and the time to speak. Good evening.
Thank you for your input. Our next speaker is Denise Gutierrez Homer, followed by Teresa Bolin.
Good afternoon, and thank you for being here despite this very nasty weather. I do hope we're not going to have any outages as we had a couple of weeks ago when we had a little bit of rain. So we're hoping that we're going to have an opportunity to see that we're working in the right direction. Since our meeting last week, as you can tell by the audience members, there is a failure to communicate with CPS and the residents of San Antonio. Because I can look at this room right now, and we had an abundance of people, lobbyists, and members of the Sierra Club coming down from Austin. They were notified, but the residents of San Antonio weren't. So with that, I went ahead and did my own little survey once I reviewed your website. You proudly state that you had over 1,268 respondents to your survey. But you service over 900,000 residents. I don't know how you can think that that is actually what we would want when you did not have the proper survey results. I don't know how CPS sends out the survey. I did not receive one, neither in my residence nor in my business. I know that with over 5,000 households that come to my business, I would have been happy to relay the survey to my customers on your behalf. I know that some of the neighborhood associations did not get that survey. So we do have a failure to communicate with your stockholders. All we can do now is hope that ERCOT does not approve this plan and we go back and table it. Thank you and have a wonderful afternoon. Bye-bye.
Thank you for your input. Our next speaker is Teresa Bolin, followed by David Horton.
Hello, my name's Teresa Bolin. I'm Precinct Chair 1082. I would like to yield my time to Sandra Crocker. Thank you.
Thank you for your input. Our next speaker is David Horton, followed by Calvin Bolin.
Good afternoon. God bless you. Thanks for coming out in this awful weather, and God bless you guys for being here too, and the public. I'm grateful that you all chose the more conservative of the two on the table last week, but I am imploring you to reconsider this move at this time. I believe that the public has not been properly, the information, as Denise Holmes Gutierrez mentioned, is there's a breakdown in communication. And this is the very first time that I'm hearing that you guys are planning to close a coal plant. And I hope you to consider the impact on ordinary people. I'm not a brain surgeon. I'm not a tenured grievance studies professor, but I am a precinct chair for 3022. And I think that there's so many things to be discussed. For example, residential customers are paying already twice as much as commercial businesses. And we just had 2 rate hikes. Cost of natural gas, I'm sorry. Yes, yeah, so sorry, I'm not very prepared right now. I'd like to say that your website is not very easy to peruse, nor the information that you use, the data that you used, and the analysis to come up with a decision. This decision to close the plants that will have generational impact on our city, devastating generational impact on businesses. You know, businesses will not want to move to Texas if there's not a reliable energy source. According to, there's an article that you just may be looking at right now from the Texas Tribune. And in that article, they talk about the issue is with the coal ash, not, the pollutants are not in the air. The pollutants are with the coal ash. And that is, the EPA even says that with proper disposal, it is not a threat to the environment. I'm asking you to please publish, be more forthcoming with the public on your plans and the evidence that you're using to come to these decisions. Where is the science? Please publish that. And that's all I have for today. Thank you. Maranatha.
Thank you for your input. Our last speaker is Cesario Garcia.
Good afternoon. My name is Cesario Garcia, and my concern right now, and I want to thank y'all for having this forum, and Mr. Mayor Nuremberg, thank you for being here as well. Here's my issue: is that 2 years ago we had a freeze that caused pain and suffering and death in our city, and we are on track now to close a coal plant that in the future may cause the exact same pain and suffering when it comes to life loss. CPS last year claimed, boasted about having a surplus of money after they charged its customers, well, a rate hike, I should say, during the height of inflation, and also during the height of when goods and services are still are extremely expensive for the average family in the city of San Antonio, District 8 notwithstanding. My issue basically right now is that we continue on going on a Green New Deal. What is the real purpose of actually going ahead and close the closures of coal plants when one of our biggest adversaries in the world, China, is opening coal plants? And so I guess my problem right now is that we continue to minimize the ability for us to have energy, yet we want to go completely green, use solar panels, and hope and pray on wind to provide electricity for this city. We're a growing city. We're the second largest city in the state of Texas. We're the 8th largest economy in the United States of America. We have so much to offer our neighbors and partners globally, but yet we want to close one of our coal plants. For what reason, what purpose, and why? That's up to y'all, and y'all have made the decision already to do so, to make that vote. And I think it's incumbent upon us citizens to stand up and really kind of voice our concern, even more so outside of this meeting. I thank you for your time, and I appreciate all that you've done thus far, but you're not doing enough to provide heat and energy for our citizens. Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you.
I apologize. There was one speaker that I inadvertently missed, and that's Calvin Bolin.
I've never had this, to do this kind of stuff. Why are we doing this? Huh? No, it's not illegal.
My name's Calvin Bolin. I'm in precinct 1082. Okay, my hope is that the CPS Energy Board does not approve of closing the coal power plant. At tomorrow's noon meeting, if this plant is closed, the cost of energy will double in a few years. San Antonio is 67% Hispanic, and many are retired and fixed income. By increasing the electric bill, people need to decide between eating, buying food. God will judge those choosing to bring hardship on the poor. By increasing the false information being provided to the citizens is that the coal power plant is old and too expensive to repair. New technology can be installed in the coal power plant to update it and make it more efficient. On a personal note, anybody ever here live in Ankara, Turkey? Then you may know, if you were in the 1970s and 80s, they ran by coal. You could stand underneath a power plant or a street light in the winter. You couldn't see the light. You could see a glow. A couple of years later, they went to a cleaner coal. Problem solved. You guys have no idea what bad pollution is. Not a concept at all. That's all I got right now.
Thank you all for your input, and that was our last registered speaker. I'll turn it back to you, Chair.
Move to item number 5, the CEO's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Trustees, appreciate you all giving us some time today. I've got a number of slides that we're going to run through. I promise to be brief, but I thought they were all worthy of inclusion in this report today. Here's a list of the items I want to cover today, all relevant to kind of the current conversations that we're having here around this dais, and that we continue to have up in Austin, and of course with our customers. Next slide. So we completed a round of rating agency visits. S&P, Moody's, and Fitch all came to San Antonio. I'm not going to repeat the discussion items included, but I thought it was a robust discussion with all three. The conversation was really about kind of our plans and our currently, some of the conversations that are going on around this table with respect to the financial need in our community, what our financial strategy looks like for the year and the years ahead. Along with, they were very interested in our long-term generation plan. And, the conversations we're having are no different than any of the other utilities that they cover, quite frankly. And, as an aside, I included a handout today showing our rating relative to the other major utilities in the state of Texas. And you can see, even with the challenges that all across the industry have faced, we still sit, second in the state of Texas in terms of our overall bond rating. So I thought the conversations were good. Certainly they are paying attention to how we do on past due balances, which I appreciate the rigor of the conversation that we're having on that item, and you'll get an update on that today, along with how we're communicating with our city owner with respect to our overall financial conditions. So again, the only agency that was actually going to credit committee following that conversation was Fitch. Fitch did not take any action on us. They reaffirmed where we were. But obviously, last year with Moody's, we saw a stabilization that included a downgrade. And so our goal is to turn our outlook from negative back to stable. And, we talked to the rating agencies about what our plan is to do that. So again, I appreciate the work that Corey and his team did to prepare for those conversations, but I just want to report to the board that those conversations went very well. Next slide. Quick update on our technology strategy. We did release our ERP, our Enterprise Resource Planning System, RFP, last month, or actually it was this month, excuse me, or right after the new year. We don't want to find ourselves, and we've been talking about this, since the last rate conversation with the city. We've got a 22-year-old computer system here at CPS Energy. And as you saw over the holidays when the airline industry had their issues, it was primarily due to old systems. And so we are very much on the path to finalizing what these particular strategies are going to cost us to implement and try to get those systems in place sooner rather than later. So this is step one, was releasing this RFP for technology, and step two will be an implementation RFP that will come later in the year once we've actually selected the system that we intend to go with. So again, with Evan and his team, I want to give credit to the organization. This has been a lot of work, and we are just at the beginning. Next slide. Wanted to cover today, there's been a lot of conversation around what's going on at the Public Utility Commission of Texas and some of the market design changes that ERCOT, the Electric Reliability Council of Texas, has been discussing. As you know, the primary driver of these conversations is how does the state define reliability? And then once they define it appropriately, how do we actually implement policy that's going to ensure the entire ERCOT system is reliable? Today, they've really formulated their recommendation based around what they call a performance credit mechanism. It basically says in a event where the grid conditions get tight, for generators that perform during that time, they're going to get an incentive basically for their performance during those times, which will happen retroactively. I can tell you that the legislature certainly has their own opinions of that policy, and you will find, and we'll talk a little bit more about it during our legislative agenda presentation later, but certainly the legislature will weigh in to what that market design change is going to look like. But I want to just reassure you that CPS Energy is right in the middle of those discussions. Next slide. I want to thank the 105 participants, including Vice Chair Gonzalez, who joined us. Mayor, I know you were there at the front of the line. We were back at the back of the line at this particular event. But we also were joined by 33 students from Students of Service, which is an organization that CPS Energy actually has a board member on. It was a great event. Looking back and seeing all the folks marching behind where we were when we were, I think, 7 or something like that, towards the end of the line, it was really breathtaking to watch so many people out, supporting this particular event. And I want to thank all those CPS Energy employees and their families for being there with us this particular time. Wanted to provide a quick weather update. As you can tell outside, it has gotten colder, and we do expect winter precipitation, to come into our service territory, primarily on the northern edge. But these conditions could change in a heartbeat, and we could see some winter precipitation across our service territory. Our power plants are ready. We've got a couple of plants that we're bringing back online today, but by and large, all of our capacity is available, with the exception of one unit that will be derated just as a result of some work that we still have to do to get it ready, over the course of the spring. And ERCOT, I actually communicated with the CEO of ERCOT, Pablo Vegas, today. ERCOT, during the tightest window, is still about 10,000 megawatts long, up to 15,000 megawatts, depending upon the time over the course of this event. So I just wanted to reassure the board that we are prepared and ready to respond to whatever comes over the next couple of days. But as always, Art Benny and his team and PowerGen, and of course, Richard Medina and Richard Lujan over our delivery businesses, they are all working hard to get our teams ready to go. So that'll be over the next couple of days. We did send out a communication to our customers who have opted into that communication today to let them know that there was some winter precipitation on the way. I wanted to take a moment and recognize the organization. Last week, we participated in the San Antonio Business Journal Business of the Year event that was at the museum up north of Alamo Heights. And I'm sorry, we have so many museums, I forget which museum that was. Not the Whitty, the other one. McNay, I'm sorry. That's the lesser of the museums that I've actually been to in town. But great facility, though. We were one of a number of nominees for the San Antonio Business Journal Business of the Year. It was a great night, and I think it's just reflective of the work that the team and the leaders are doing to try to get us back on track. We know we've got plenty of work to do, but it was a nice recognition for the team for the work that they've done trying to rebuild trust with our community as we move further and further away from Winter Storm Uri. So a number of my leaders were there with us that night, and it was a great event. I want to thank the Business Journal for including us as a nominee for that recognition. Next slide, please. Today, I am going to be recognizing our corporate communications and marketing team. We work really hard around here to communicate on a number of fronts, communicate with multiple stakeholders across our community, communicate with our internal employees on a daily basis, communicate like, we talk about sending text messages to our customers. That does not just happen. It happens because we have a great team of professionals behind the scenes that are working hard every day. We've always got opportunities, as we heard today, to communicate better, and we will, take that feedback and continue to work hard to do the best we can. But I do want to take a moment. This team works hard. I am probably as connected to this team inside the organization as any because of the importance of the work that they do under the direction of our Vice President, Melissa Sorolla, and all of our corporate communications and marketing team members. On behalf of CPS Energy, I want to thank you, take a moment to recognize you for your efforts, especially right now is our busy season with the cold coming in. So thank you for the work that you do, and please know that your efforts are seen and appreciated. So thank you. And I think Loretta is going to take a picture. Vince is actually going to be in the picture today. All right. Thank you. And that is my report, sir.
Yes, go ahead.
Oh, so Mr. Garza, we have these Tier 1 metrics. I think there's 16 of them. And we've been looking at them, of course, almost every meeting. And the question I want to ask you is, when do we establish those metrics for this fiscal year, and how will that be done?
The board has given us direction to reevaluate those, which the Ops Oversight Committee has been in the process of doing. We will report through the balance of, once we get to we close for the year tomorrow, and there's a process to go through that. We'll report on the existing set of metrics at the end of this fiscal year, and we're in the process of creating a revised set of metrics going forward. So the Ops Oversight Committee is handling that work.
But who will end up establishing those metrics? Who puts the final stamp of approval on it?
As the incoming chair, I will, but I definitely want input from all trustees, and then the chairperson for the new fiscal year for that would be Dr. Romero.
And just something I wanted to mention, because you brought up the credit rating agencies. For example, I would like for us to challenge ourselves more. You know, we're carrying those two negative outlooks. And the way the metric for, let me find it here. Yeah, we have a metric called Enterprise Senior Lien Bond Ratings. And we meet that metric just by remaining where we are. And I think that the purpose of setting these metrics are to be challenging to you. So right now, there's a footnote, it's hard to read, but it says a measure of the senior lien bond ratings is measured by Fitch, Moody's, and Standard & Poor's, such that 1 represents the maintenance of current ratings, a 2 or 0 indicates an upgrade or downgrade in one or more ratings. And that's just an example where I think that we ought to be challenging ourselves to put those negative outlooks behind us, and that's how the metric ought to be set up.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Steen. Okay, we can move on. Let's move on to.
I think Ms. Gonzalez can comment.
Thank you, Mr. Steen. I appreciate Mr. Steen.
I'm sorry.
Ms. Gonzalez?
I'll make it brief because we have a pretty packed agenda. I don't disagree. Probably for my freshman year, there was a lot of KPIs were not in alignment with expectations of today. I think, again, we have a wonderful opportunity with new leadership, a new perspective, and things that we've all voted on to reevaluate every single KPI to address not only your concerns, community concerns, and internal concerns. And so I think we're poised to do a more effective job with the KPIs. So thank you for your input, Mr. Steen.
Thank you.
Thank you,
We
Ms.
move to
Gonzalez.
Item number 6, accounts receivables, monthly update.
Good afternoon, trustees. I'll be here giving the update to follow through on the conversation that we had in December for the resolution for us to continue to administer the tactics that we talked about and to also provide a monthly update. So I'll be walking through a snapshot, show the trends that we are experiencing, and I'll go through what our ongoing efforts have been, what the outcome of those efforts are, and then kind of what's next. But overall, before we go in, what I want to point out is over the past 2 months, we have been able to see 2 months of positive trending. When the last numbers that we had through the end of October, we were at $207 million past due. Through November and December, we have reduced that down to $200 million past due, and then that comes down to half of that being in installment plans. So here's the snapshot, and I'll just to kind of reemphasize, the 213,000 customer accounts that we have that are past due equates to $200 million. But of those accounts, 38,000 of those are inactive. That means that they are closed, disconnected, and they'll be going through our external collection agencies before they go through the write-off process. So then that leaves us to focus on 175,000 of the active accounts. Of that, it's $161 million, and you can see the breakout between residential and commercial accounts. But just to reemphasize what I had mentioned before, $100 million of that, or almost 78,000 customers, are on some type of installment plan. That means that those customers have connected to us through our outreach, through our events, and committed to us to pay back the amount that they owe us, kind of going back to what we've been talking about before. It took a long time to get here from a past due perspective, and it's going to take some time to get out. The average length of those accounts of those installment plans is about 28 months. So it's going to take a series of time to get customers in a place that's in a better position. But that really leaves us with about 97,000 customer accounts that we really can influence. And we're going to continue to see what we can do. On the left-hand side, I highlighted all the work that we've been doing. So we have, over the course of the year, we connected customers with the assistance of the city, specifically with the ARPA assistance, but plus the money that we were able to get from various agencies like Bexar County or other religious entities. Nearly $80 million of assistance through all of the outreach that our teams have done. And that really has reflected in the amount of customers that we've seen to be able to move to installment plans and get the assistance. But at the same time, we know that we have to continue with our collections efforts. So over the course of the year. We've done about 23,000 account disconnections and over $2 million in our collection notifications, excuse me, and that has resulted in 2 months in a row where we've seen the positive trend for our past due accounts. And so we're going to continue with our collection activities as well as our community outreach. So here I've highlighted some of the outreach that our teams have done. We do everything from the public safety and education to get to students, but we also encourage and send information home about different programs and services that we have. And we're really focused on our outreach for the 45,000 accounts that are still not on some type of installment plan. That might be because they have, just a low dollar amount, so it's not going to be eligible for disconnection just yet, or it hasn't reached that time threshold. But at the end of the day, we know that the earlier we can get and connect those customers with assistance, the least, we won't see those accounts continue to grow. So we're continuing to see what other dollars are out there to connect customers with. And then at the same time, we know that we're going to have to pivot to the account disconnections. And so here, this is where you see a bigger breakdown of that, where we really are focused on the 97,000 accounts that are not currently on any type of plan. So we're going to continue outreach. We're going to continue to find that assistance. And at the same time, from a disconnect perspective, we have, back in October, as I mentioned before, we were at pre-pandemic levels, but we've continued to ramp up our collections as well as our disconnect efforts. And whenever we are unable to connect with any customers and when all of our other efforts fail, we will disconnect an account, but we're also right there to reconnect them as well, based on what capacity that we have. And so as of the second week of February, we plan on being, with all of our staffing that we've done, being at full-fledged, both on the outreach as well as on the disconnections where that's needed. And so one thing I want to talk about is those installment plans. So when we talk about $100 million, and it's about an average of 28 months that those installment plans go for, we know that we have a 50% rate of return or success rate for those customers. And so this is what it looks like. So when you think about $100 million, we're not going to get that money back immediately, but we have that promise to pay from our customers. And usually if a customer can't make that, one or two things going to happen. One, they're going to call us and we're going to find a different plan. It's going to probably be, it will be a lot more strict for them to adhere to, or their account's going to be disconnected. So one way or the other, we try and do everything we can to connect them on the front end, but even after, if we have to disconnect them, we'll still continue to work with them to help get them back on track and get us back on track as well. And then ultimately, I just wanted to show you what our January outreach looks like. So we're continuing outreach and literally knocking door to door. And here's the month of January. I'll highlight on the 10th of January, we were out in D10, literally knocked on our 15 businesses that had the highest amount past due. And just with that one effort, we were able to collect over $70,000 by going door to door to our commercial customers. At the same time, we were in the community and we had our bus out there. So you get a flyer on your door, you get a call at home, and you get a knock. We're there for you, and then we also have our bus out there. So we're continuing with those efforts. We understand the importance of making sure that we are being compassionate with our customers and balancing that out with the financial stability of our company as well as for our customers, and wanted to show that we're meeting the commitment and the asks that the board gave us last month during the resolution. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, is it okay if I ask some
Yes,
questions?
he has a question.
Deanne, couple of, so I'm clear. So statistically, 50%, the chances of collecting 100 million is most likely what we're going to be able to, that's what we're targeting out of the 175.
No, so out of the $175 million, 100 has already been committed to us in installment plans.
Right, but statistically, you said the chance, 50, so that would amount to about 100 million.
Well, it's 100 million that's in there, so $50 million will come back, or it'll be an installment plan. It'll either go into another installment plan or go through the write-off.
Okay, so again, let me reiterate that. Let me at least reiterate how I understand. So from the 100 million right? So statistically, we're more likely to collect. You already have 50%, so you already have 50 million of that already in some shape or form, in some plan.
Yes, ma'am.
Then the remainder is 50 million that we have to concentrate on that are not in some shape or form. Like they're not in any installment plan, is that correct? Okay, my other question is, have we already identified, I mean, obviously it was I hate to use the word over and over again, it's so used already, unprecedented event, right? But historically, we still have a pattern of consistent, interrupted rate payers, I guess, clients. And so have we established a pattern with these individuals for that concentrated 100 million? Is it about not having enough information? Is it really just like a lot of us just struggling because it really set us back 3 years? Because I can empathize with that as a small business owner. Or is it anything else that maybe we're learning differently? Because I do believe insights are important in how to finesse our strategy.
The biggest thing that we found is that it's not the people who were repetitive before going through our collections process. Those customers already knew how to find assistance. This really is a whole new set of demographics of folks who've never needed assistance and they don't know where to go to. And so it's really about showing all of the different services that are out there. And sometimes it's just about letting customers know that they can sign up for an installment plan. A lot of the conversations that we're having direct with customers, thank you very much. Aw. A lot of the conversations that we're having with customers is they said, I'm so deep in the hole, I'm just paralyzed and don't know what to do.
I was about to say, I don't think a lot of us who've never been in that position know how to ask help. I think a lot of us come from a place of shame or we feel like we failed. And so I do think that understanding that and being relatable to that and finding other ways, strategies, that's where the marketing communication team comes in. So I would like a suggestion to the incoming chair for operations. Where would this item fall under? Would it be under operations for collections? Is my question, Rudy? If I wanted this to be a standing item to evaluate how we're performing or how we're doing with this, what committee would that fall under?
Well, probably ops oversight would be the best place for that to be, but we're going to leave it on the agenda monthly, which is what the board directed us to after last month. So we'll be talking about it there and here.
Right, and the only reason why I want it, not only, I think it's a good idea that we have it as a standing agenda to address the concerns of balanced budget and address the concerns of having to address this is so that we can find ways through the committee, see what's working and not working, and then figure out how to adjust our KPIs on that, right? So that we are not setting up ourselves for failure. But thank you very much for the report and all the efforts that's taking place out there.
Thank you, trustee.
Mayor, next.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Dan, for the update. Just a real quick question on slide 3. It shows that $78 million in utility relief has already gone out. Is that all out already?
Yes, that's already been pledged
How
for.
many accounts does that represent?
I can get the final number, but I believe it was close to 45,000.
45,000 accounts. And so my follow-on question for that is every account that's received assistance is now enrolled in a payment plan?
Yes, the majority of them are. Some of them, they've probably fallen off, and if they do, then our teams proactively reach out to them.
Okay, great. Cautiously optimistic, not ready to call it a trend, but I think if we can continue to see this pattern over the next couple of months, it'll give us some optimism about getting that payment down. So thank you
Yes,
very
sir, thank
much.
you.
Mr. Steen.
So if we could put up that slide 4. So I think for people watching, the way to look at that is that, correct, is that the green are people that are paying on time.
Yes, sir, those are current accounts.
And then so once you start with that dark blue, that's the people that are past due.
Yes, sir.
And to move from where we were, which was 210 million, is that our high?
It was at 208, yes, sir.
208, and then we've moved down to 200. And I think, I appreciate that. That's progress, but of course, that would just be a little sliver off the top of that dark blue, and so we've got a long way to go. You're on the front lines. You're talking to people all the time. How how deep is this problem? In other words, is it something where you can see an end to it at some point? Or do you think it's just going to go on and on?
I think it's going to take a while. So when customers are committing to that 28th month in terms of an installment plan, that's really what they believe that they need. I can give you a little anecdote to go along with that. We had a customer that we had to disconnect. They went and got a generator, put it on their account, put it on their house just to keep themselves going through Christmas. Unfortunately, because they didn't have any money, they couldn't commit to paying anything, even the minimum that we had. Through our AMI data, we were able to identify that there was backfeed, which creates a safety issue for our folks. So we went out there, we did just a check, a wellness check and a safety check. And while we were there, the gentleman said, look, I'm just trying to do everything I can to get through Christmas. All I have is a gallon of milk in the refrigerator. There's nothing I can do. And so fortunately, our teams work very well together. We got connected with our community outreach team, one of those agency assistance options. We were able to actually get a good chunk of that account cleared. But the rest is going in about a 30-month installment plan for that customer because they were really just trying to figure out, do I pay for my power or do I buy something other than milk? So it's going to be, depending on what our community sees and what they can afford, we're continuing to work with them and find the best thing we can do is get the installment plan set up after we've identified as much agency assistance that's out there. Because I do think the 28-month is what we're going to see for that to continue to come down. I think we're going to hit a peak and then come down, but it's going to be 2 years for slow and steady. And that was part of our conversation with the rating agency is it took us a while to get here. We're asking you to give us time to get out of it. We are seeing a response from our activities. So when we disconnect account, a customer usually can't pay all $900. They can only pay a portion. The rest of it's going to go into an installment plan, and it's going to be slow and steady to get that money back. But I do believe that we're going to continue to see it continue just to gradually come down.
Well, two things about, or I guess the thing I'd like to add to what Deanna just said, the real evidence of the work that we're doing, Mr. Steen, has to do with how many customers we're getting on payment plans. Because to get on payment plans, they have to stay current with their current bill in addition to, knocking down the past due balance. So that helps us stop the bleeding. So it's not the 200 million and bringing that number down, absolutely important. But the number of customers and the number of customers staying on the payment plans, that's really the better indicator of the job that Deanna and her team are doing. They're working really hard. And to get to 100,000 customers on a payment plan took a lot of work. And, we're challenging ourselves. And I mean, it sounds harsh, but it's a reality of where we are. We're going to keep ramping up disconnects beyond even where we are. And we're already double where we were pre-pandemic levels. We may get up to 10,000 customers on a weekly basis that are getting disconnected. But in some cases, that is the only way we're going to get, we're going to start to knock down some of the, really longer 60 to 120 day, customer, segment. So I would just ask, as we have this conversation, that we have the full conversation about where the work is really happening, and it's getting customers on a payment plan. That's step one.
And just and you're a great source because you're talking to so many people. But are you getting feedback where people are saying, specifically, my problem is that my bill has gone up so much, or is it more all my bills are going up, inflation and what have you?
The feedback we're getting is that it's not just my utility bill, it's everything, right? I've got to pay more when I go to HEB, just like I have to pay more for everything else, and I just don't know how I'm going to afford this with everything else.
Thank you.
The only thing I wanted to add is maybe we don't have to do all the work alone too. I'll be talking to the mayor and the board of a nonprofit who's approached us to also be ambassadors for us, but also maybe be able to offset those costs. And so I think there's an opportunity to leverage HOAs and to leverage other nonprofits that have, and also chambers. I think that it's also for those of us who are in business, again, we haven't been in this position. It's not just about costs going up, but it could also be that our sales dried up because we weren't able to sell our network for 2.5 or 3 years. And so it's not just about citizens, but it's also how can we leverage the partnerships that we have with the chambers to be able to have, again, constructive, conversations with them to inform again, chamber members, both large and small, who may not have been in this position before. And so I do think it's a great time, regardless of what's happening in the world, for us to partner up with nonprofits and chambers and other, organizations that can be ambassadors for us to try to resolve this collectively. So thank you for your work.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. The board needs to know, I know the board knows, they don't need to know anything, they already know, but when we start asking Deanna and her crew to start improving on the receivable trend in this, then they're gonna have to disconnect. So they have to do that and get that attention, and we have to get the money to pay the bills. So be careful of this, how fast you want to move to this, because there's a repercussion when we start doing this. So keep this in mind when these things start happening. You're going to start hearing a lot of other things, and I support them doing their job, because just like she said, they're doing it, more than they've done pre-pandemic, and that's cutting off 10,000, disconnects. So be careful on this. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, if we could move to item number 6, amendment rules of order for the CPS Energy. Item 7, amendment rules of order for the CPS Energy Board of Trustees. Could you read that relationship amendment, Ms.?
Yes, sir. For the benefit of the group, I would like to note that this is not a corporate or a board policy. It is rules of order for the Board of Trustees. In addition to correcting a couple of updates to titles, grammar, and punctuation, the substantive amendment is the addition of Article 10, which is a new article, Relations with Management. The President and CEO is responsible for developing the strategic direction and overall management of CPS Energy's operations. Therefore, it is imperative that the relationship between the board and the President and CEO, including CPS Energy staff, be supportive, cooperative, and respectful of each other's roles, duties, and responsibilities. Accordingly, the board shall maintain appropriate lines of communication and an understanding of the separate roles of the board and staff. The board or any other member, the chair or any other member of the board shall not direct the president and CEO on any operational activities. Directives to the president and CEO shall only come through board resolutions and policy decisions. This article does not prohibit a trustee from communicating directly with the Office of General Counsel or the internal auditor for CPS Energy. It is the responsibility of the chairman and vice chairman to ensure that the roles of both trustees and management are protected in the event of any breach of this understanding. I will also note that new Article 11 does reflect an updated effective date of January 30th, 2023.
Okay, I want to make a motion to approve the item number 7, amendment rules of order for the CPS Energy Board of Trustees. Do I have a second? We're going to ask questions afterwards.
Okay, I'll second.
A second by Trustee Ramirez. Now I can open the floor up for questions and comments. Ms. Gonzalez?
I think I'm reading the right document. Can y'all refer to page 9 out of 10? And it's Energy Delivery Services, EDS. Is this the right article that we're approving?
Article right here.
Or my head, never mind. Never mind. What does this one belong to?
That's minutes.
Oh, this is a minute?
Yes.
Okay, never mind then.
Okay, that's right here.
I'll address it later.
Okay. Okay, do we have any questions? Mr. Steen?
Our general counsel, and it's interesting because I stumbled over the same sentence, thought it was a typo, but I think it's intentional, but it's the sentence, the board or any member of the board shall not direct the president CEO on any operational activity. And I think the writer was trying to say that the board as a whole or any individual member of the board shall not direct the president CEO specifically on an operational activity. Is that what y'all? Who wrote this, by the way?
I wrote this, so I think that you're right. So I apologize. I believe that I said the chair of the board, but I do think that it's the board as a body or any member of the board. Thank you, sir.
Okay, if no other questions, do we have a motion? We have a motion and a second.
Motion to approve?
We have,
We have a motion and a second. I'm ready to poll the trustees. Vice Chair Gonzalez?
Yes.
Trustee Steen?
Yes, excuse me.
Mayor? Trustee Romero?
Yes.
Chair Dr. Mackey?
Yes. Motion carries. Motion carries. Thank you. At this time, we'd like to move to item number 8, executive session. Ms. Ramirez, would you please take us into executive session?
At this time, the board is going to recess into executive session to discuss matters that have been duly posted under several provisions of Chapter 551 of the Texas Government Code, including consultation concerning attorney-client matters under Section 551.071, deliberations and other authorization on real property under Section 551.072, prospective gifts or donations under Section 551.073, personnel matters under Section 551.074, security personnel or devices under Section 551.076, to deliberate regarding security audits and devices under Section 551.089, to deliberate under the Texas Government Code, Section 418.183, subsection F, about confidential information under the Texas Homeland Security Act, economic development negotiations under Section 551.076, and to deliberate, vote, or take final action on competitive matters under Section 551.086. At the conclusion of executive session, the board will reconvene in open session and continue the meeting. It is 2:01 as we go into executive session. It is 3:05 PM and the board has concluded executive session. I can confirm that there were no votes taken and no matters were discussed that were not part of the posted agenda. We have a quorum. All members are present.
Okay, we'll move to item number 9, approval of consent items, minutes of the regular board meeting held on 10/31/2022, on 11/29/2022, and with the C, minutes of the regular board meeting held on 12/19/2022 with the necessary changes. D, payment to the city of San Antonio for December 2022. Resolution approving the strategic purchase of real property. And F, procurement items, it's none. Do we have a motion?
I move approval.
Okay, we have approval. Trustee Romero, do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Trustee Gonzalez. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Ayes approved. We had 1, 2, 3, 4. I didn't hear one. Okay, thank you, Mr. Steen. Okay, we have number 10, committee report, audit and finance committee, A&F meeting held on 11/17/2022. By Mr. Steen, employee benefit oversight committee, meeting held on 11/17/2022. Mr. Steen?
So in both those cases, rather than read committee reports, I'd just like for them to be placed in the record.
Thank you. They'll be placed in the records. Okay, we move to item number 11, CPS Energy Public Policy Priority, resolution supporting CPS Energy Public Policy, and Mr. Garza will discuss this.
Well, I promise you that Kathy Garcia and Carrie Meyer would have been much more engaging in this presentation. Out of an abundance of caution, we asked them to stay up in Austin due to the inclement weather. It is already below freezing and rainy up there, so you get me for this today. Very active. Loretta, you're gonna drive for me. The legislature is in session, and they will be in session, a little less than 140 days now, but they're, as a result of a lot of the activity at the Public Utility Commission and ERCOT, which I, briefed you in part on during my president's report, energy will be a key item considered at the legislature this particular session. So we've really kind of set up our agenda to have really 3 strategic pillars, which I'll go through. And I do want to say this, in an effort to engage the board a little more formally, this is really the first time we've asked the board to pass a resolution. And that's because I want you all to feel like you're a strategic part of our program. There's going to be opportunities to get the board up to Austin during this session to participate in, committee hearings. Of course, Viva San Antonio Day is in February, and you all get an invitation to come up for that. But I very much want the board to feel free to ask questions and to engage in whatever manner you're interested in. So here's an agenda today, and we'll kind of hit the high points of our legislative program. But as the largest municipally owned electric and gas utility, certainly in the state of Texas, we're twice the size of Austin, and we're, of course, the largest in the country. The legislature cares what CPS Energy thinks about a lot of the issues that they take up on an annual basis. As you know, these are the state priorities that really are the priorities. Every session, there's over a $32 billion budget surplus that the state has to figure out what they're going to do with. And of course, that's the one item, passing a budget, that the legislature has to do. And then there are a number of other public priorities that the legislature will engage in conversations about this session. With respect to our industry, Senate Bill 3 was passed last session, which really was the impetus for the market reform activity at ERCOT and the Public Utility Commission over the interim. They will continue to tweak elements of implementation for Senate Bill 3 this session, The PUC and ERCOT are both up for sunset review this session, so anytime that happens, energy will be an issue inevitably as part of the dialogue at the legislature. The PUC has their agency report, which will go to the respective committees for discussion and dissemination. And of course, the market design proposals, which I talked about earlier. And all this, there will also be discussions about the role of renewable energy, and you've already seen bills being filed along those lines, and energy efficiency. I think the state recognizes that energy efficiency plays a role in how we meet our resource needs in the coming years, and so there are also a number of energy efficiency-related conversations that will be happening. Our three main pillars for our priorities this session, customer affordability and impacts. We've talked some about that with respect to the impacts of Winter Storm Uri. Those conversations remain ongoing. To the extent there's resources available for customers, CPS Energy will be there ensuring our customers get the benefit of that. Utility governance, the fact that we're a municipally owned utility and a lot of our decision-making from a policy perspective happens at the local level. It's important for us to pay attention to that, as there are always tweaks to potential governance that impact our model here in San Antonio. And then reliability and resiliency. Every major industry across the state is interested in how to make their own operations more resilient, and so we're certainly paying attention to that as a primary pillar. Here is the information on customer affordability. Again, there's funding that comes through the state from the federal level that we have to pay attention to. And then there are a number of customer-facing programs that the legislature will engage in at the PUC. There are dollars at the PUC for customer assistance that also impact San Antonio that we have to pay attention to. And then as we talk about how to define reliability, as part of the market design conversations, there are costs associated with those reliability conditions that will get ultimately passed on to consumers, and so we have to pay attention to that. Next slide. In terms of utility governance, I mentioned the MOU business model. There are 72 MOUs, municipally owned utilities, across the state of Texas. We by far are the largest, so we want to make sure that there's a balance between the state policy that we're governed by, as well as local decision-making authority, and making sure that stays in balance. And we also we work really hard to maintain our relationship with our city owner. And there are all types of local government-related policies that come out that we pay attention to from a public power standpoint to make sure that there are no kind of unintended consequences from that particular conversation. Next slide. And finally, reliability and resiliency. Everybody wants the grid to be there when we need it. We are part of the ERCOT grid so when anything happens across the ERCOT grid, whether it's in San Antonio or in Dallas, Houston, the Valley, wherever we are, it's going to impact San Antonio in some form or fashion. So we got to make sure that the gas supply that we use for our gas portfolio is available, and that the same standards that are being applied to the electric industry are also equally applied to the natural gas industry. And certainly we're having conversations about our supply chain constraints up in Austin as well. As everybody knows, we have critical supply issues with transformers and pipe and wire and meter bases and some very kind of bread and butter equipment that we need to run our system, and we believe that there's a role for the state of Texas to play in helping us solve those problems. From a alignment standpoint, we have a whole process internally of how bills get reviewed, how we develop positions, even how we develop our elevator speeches and talking points as our resources are moving around the Capitol. So we certainly have one of the strongest alignment programs internally to CPS Energy that help us be successful, by being consistent and really leaning on our legislative delegation in Austin who want to make sure CPS Energy is successful up there. Next slide. And of course, we're going to work with our partners across the community. This is just a very high-level cross-section of partners we work with to achieve success up in Austin. But anytime somebody locally comes to us and asks for CPS Energy for support on something, as long as it pertains to our business and is good for San Antonio, we're going to stand up and we're going to be supportive. But there are a number of partners that we work with really closely as the session moves through the process up in Austin. So today there's a very simple resolution that will provide support along the three main pillars that we just reviewed, and we formally request your support for approval of our legislative program up in Austin.
Yes, sir. This is the resolution supporting CPS Energy's public policy priorities. Whereas the regular session of the 88th Texas Legislature convened on January 10, 2023, and will adjourn on May 29, 2023, and whereas CPS Energy has developed and presented to this Board of Trustees our priorities and anticipated engagement, which are captured in three main pillars: 1, customer affordability and impacts; 2, utility governance; and 3, reliability and resiliency. And whereas the customer affordability and impacts pillar will focus CPS Energy on proposals that will support directing any available funds to utility customers in need and seek to minimize other proposals' impacts on utility costs and customer bills. And whereas the utility governance pillar will focus CPS Energy on proposals that will protect the municipally-owned utility business model and local decision-making authority. And whereas the reliability and resiliency pillar will focus CPS Energy on proposals that strengthen the reliability and resiliency of the electric grid and natural gas systems, including addressing supply chain challenges in a manner that appropriately balances the benefits with the associated cost to our utility and our customers. And now, therefore, be it resolved, the CPS Energy Board of Trustees supports CPS Energy's public policy priorities focused on three main pillars of customer affordability and impacts, utility governance, and reliability and resiliency.
We have a motion to approve.
Motion to approve the proposed resolution supporting CPS Energy's public policy priorities for the legislation.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. Okay, we have any discussion? Yes.
So if we could go to slide 4. So I noticed on there, under anticipated industry priorities, we've got market design proposals, and Mr. Garza, you talked about this earlier. About 10 days ago, the PUC voted unanimously to revamp how electricity is bought and sold, a move that potentially could have dramatic impacts on CPS Energy's customers' bills. And what the PUC selected was what's called a performance credit mechanism. I know you went over this a little bit. Generally, this would give generators performance credits paid for by electricity retail providers and their customers that would be awarded to those that are available during certain hours on days when grid conditions are at their tightest. So I've read that people from the Express News have made inquiries to CPS Energy about how this mechanism would affect customers, specifically how their bills could be impacted by the proposed changes, but apparently we've not responded to their questions about potential impacts. Back in October, when CPS Energy declined to comment on the market design proposal, the reason given was what we were awaiting a report from the PUC's consultant with technical details about the different redesign options. But I understand that CPS Energy has not commented on the subject since. So I just want to ask you, is it correct that you have not, that CPS Energy has not responded to media inquiries about this matter?
So, Mr. Steen, I'm almost positive that we issued a statement. We may not have met their deadline, but I'll have to ask Melissa because we have a view of how that particular issue impacts, our customers. So, Melissa, can you come clarify? Because I know I've seen the statement, sir.
Oh, sorry about that. We've issued general statement, but not a lot of details so far, though.
Now I'd like to go to slide 5. And on slide 5, you've got 3 priorities and subjects for engagement during the 88th legislature, and I note that the number 1 pillar and priority is customer affordability and impact. So my question is, why haven't we commented on this important development?
Well, couple of reasons. Number one, the devil's in the details. And so as the actual market redesign is being, drafted, we look at it as both generator and as a load-serving entity. And in the competitive market, you'd be a retailer in that regard. And so we're going to benefit, to the extent our generation is available and, has access to those incentives, we would benefit from that. But there's also a cost. And so unlike members of the competitive market who are either in one line of business or the other, we're, almost depending upon the condition, we're going to have to decide whether, we think one way or think the other. So a lot of those details are yet to be formalized, and so we're kind of keeping our powder dry, so to speak, until, we get more detail on that. The other aspect of it is the legislature doesn't agree with the Public Utility Commission on this issue. And so we want to make sure that as we engage in a legislative conversation, it's clear the lieutenant governor and the governor are on opposite ends of this conversation. And so, we're gonna evaluate, how the legislature responds to the action taken by the Public Utility Commission. I have had personal conversations with the chairman of the PUC, Peter Lake, and Pablo Vegas, the head of ERCOT, on these issues, but it is still very early in the policy development stage. So that's why we're keeping our comments general.
Well, I will note that we're members of the Texas Public Power Association, correct?
Yes, sir. We are
All right.
members.
That they actually took a stance on the performance credit mechanism. So, apparently they had enough information to take a stand on it. But the reason I'm bringing it up is, again, and it's something we're talking about at every meeting, the plight of our overburdened customers, and of course 20% of whom are past due on their CPS bills. And so it seems to me that it would have been helpful to us at our last meeting if we'd known, if we'd had some idea of what this plan might do to our customers' bills. You don't have any idea?
Sir, we can get you a full-blown, analysis of what the PCM does and does not do. I can tell you that, from my standpoint, we're a little different than a lot of our peer utilities across Texas because we're the 4th largest generator in the state of Texas. And so from my standpoint, when I go up to Austin and talk about these issues, which I do frequently, my number 1 job is to keep the lights on. And the state needs more resources, plain and simple. And we got to do that in a way that doesn't overburden customers. So the fact is, there's a balance between achieving policy outcomes that ensure reliability, in a way that we think is appropriate. So I think there are elements of the PCM that I think are appropriate. Now, whether you call it, the issue is that the legislature doesn't care for. They don't like the idea of moving from our energy-only market to a capacity market. And anything that looks like making that move, they're going to push back on. But to ensure reliability, there may be some generation that does need to get built. And CPS Energy absolutely has a role to play in that outcome. So it's not as simple as telling you I like the PCM or I don't like the PCM. There are elements of the PUC's proposal that I think do achieve a reliability outcome, but we're paying attention to what the cost implications are.
Well, and maybe you can't answer this question, but if it was adopted as it's been laid out by the PUC, what could we expect in terms of our customer bills? What impact would it have on them?
There have been all kinds of estimates on 4 or 5 billion dollars, whatever the number is, on the reliability upcharge that the entire state of Texas would pick up. So if the PCM is approved as the PUC adopted, then I would expect there to be a cost implication for San Antonio. But again, I think any policy that pays market participants for generation capacity is going to have a cost. And there's only one place that cost is going to go, and that's to our customers.
I think it would be helpful as the legislature goes through the process, if we had, and I don't know what work it requires to come up with that, but if we had some idea, it seems like that we ought to be thinking about our customers and what these various mechanisms might do in terms of our customers' bills. It's a theme we're talking about at every meeting about our overburdened customers.
Can I have input other than Mr. Steen? I think in fairness, and I want to, again, I'm thankful for the participants, but I think this is a very complicated matter, and as stewards, governance, you hold us accountable. We should not be having premature conversations when we haven't developed a framework or have how we're going to execute that. Again, I'm not against being responsible to our ratepayers, but at the same time, we also are just as governance, as Board of Trustees, just learning about all these things. We have to have a good plan. We can't just say we're going to do one thing because Mr. Steen's concerned and then not take into consideration the complexity of what we're doing. So in fairness, I think it's only fair that the public realize that we are just getting wind. And at the end of the day, we are held accountable. Not one person speaks for us. The entire board speaks.
And Mr. Steen, I'll be happy to get the board a full briefing on the PCM. We've got plenty of paper written up on this. Be glad to share it with you if you're interested.
Just to be clear, we did participate very closely with the TPPA comments, so we were actively involved in that process. And just again, as a reminder, this goes through the Operations Oversight Committee, so they have received energy.
Which adds to my point. Earlier, Mr. Steen was concerned about addressing the KPIs, and here again, he's already making a public statement, which doesn't allow us to incorporate those KPIs within our new operational fiscal year. So again, I think we're getting ahead when we need to really do a better job through our process, understand that this is coming down the pipeline, and it has to be part of our operational key performance measurements and how we're going to address that. So it's premature, I think, for us to be making statements about something like this and we have not incorporated in how we're going to evaluate this. I think what's important is that we communicate to our customers that our number one priority is to find ways to offset costs and have a balanced budget, and that is important.
Okay. Other questions?
Well, just to close out, again, our number one pillar is customer affordability, and I'd like more information about what this proposed design might entail.
Mr. Mayor, please.
No, I think it's one thing to say customer affordability and customer impact, and it's another thing to act on it. I mean, the truth of the matter is, if they weren't trying to somehow cope with the lack of action as a result of post-Winter Storm Uri, we probably wouldn't even be having a conversation about PCM. I mean, the truth of the matter is customers all across the state got gouged because of the high gas prices that were allowed to stay at that price for so long, and they are doing everything but fix the market reality that can happen again. And so how are we going to build a reliable energy grid, at the same time protect customers who are being seen as the ATM for our state's energy system? And that's what I would be interested in, is how are we actually going to fix it, not just pay lip service to customer affordability at the state level. At the end of the day, the public utilities are still required to generate power and provide for customer affordability at every step. And what I would love to see is how PCM or whatever action is going to happen in this legislature is actually going to impact customers who have been most impacted during the height of the winter storm and everything after. So let's find solutions that work rather than just paying lip service to customer affordability.
Motion to approve the policy?
Resolution, yes.
The resolution, I'm sorry.
We made motion and we had a second, right? Okay, go ahead and vote.
Vice Chair Gonzalez?
Yes.
Trustee Steen?
Yes.
Mayor?
Yes.
Trustee Romero?
Yes.
Chair Dr. Mackey?
Yes.
Motion carries.
At this time, we'd like to move to Item number 12, fiscal year 2024 budget. Mr. Corey Kuczynski.
All right, thank you, Chair Dr. Mackey. Good afternoon, everybody. Saving the most exciting topic for last. So as you know, we come annually to the board for our approval of our capital and operation and maintenance budget. And last year, we approved the annual budget as part of the multi-year plan with the backdrop of our rate increase and focus on investing in our community. So this year, I'll present to you a budget as a continuation of that multi-year plan and a continuation of the investments that we've been talking about for over a year. I think the overarching theme of this budget is less about the dollars and more about the theme that CPS Energy is in a transformational era of investment. And what that means is focusing on reinvesting in our existing infrastructure and preparing for future investment that we've talked about in new technologies that our community has asked for. So, as we began this journey of transformational investment, we're executing to the plan that we laid out a year ago. We've also worked extensively with our financial advisors over the last year on developing this plan and this outlook. We've also stayed in touch with our peer utilities as well, and the types of things that they're seeing and pressures that they're seeing. And what we find is we're no different than others across the country in terms of the challenges that we face. And so, relative to the numbers, this recommended budget is similar in nature to what we had forecasted for the targets for this upcoming year when we were talking and discussing the 5-year plan during the rate case. And I'll walk through those areas of similarities and areas of differences. So on the next slide here, kind of two views. You've got on the left-hand side, fiscal 23, which is the year that we're in, and then you can see on the right-hand side, fiscal 24, the year we're going into. And as I've mentioned, we've stuck to the plan. We've invested in community growth, infrastructure modernization, technology, and people all this year. And at the end of the day, we expect to end the year on par with our operations and maintenance and capital plans, and I'll speak to those in a little more detail. On the far right, we're talking about fiscal 24. We use the phrase there that this upcoming year is a bridge to additional funding for fiscal 25. And I'll talk more about that, but it's consistent with the messaging that we had a year ago. And the areas of investments, again, continue to be consistent with the conversations we had about investing in community growth, our generation fleet, technology, and our people. What you'll find is that we're going to recommend an operation and maintenance budget that is in line with what we had previously forecast, but you will see a slightly higher capital plan recommendation, which I'll go into, in details as we get to that. Very briefly, just for a quick reminder, these are the various items that we have the Board of Trustees vote on, and the two items highlighted at the bottom are the two that we're bringing today, which is approval of our capital spend and our non-fuel operation and maintenance, also known as O&M budget. And so part one of what is being asked for your approval is on this slide, our operation and maintenance budget. This slide is just a little bit more context to what I had mentioned just a second ago. And you can see on the far right that $773 million. What that's really indicating is that when we had brought to you our 5-year plan last year, fiscal 24, our upcoming year, we had anticipated a $773 million budget, and we're proposing the same amount, so no change there. What you do see on the left-hand side, just for context, is a slightly lower than expected O&M spend for this fiscal year. Now that is good in the sense that we're coming in under forecast, but I will tell you there's a couple of non-cash items in there that make that number look a little lower. What I'd say is generally from an operations standpoint, our team spent where they need to spend, and for the most part on target. I think the real story here is that we previously expected and continue to expect a need for a higher O&M budget for this upcoming year. And that's in order to continue to manage funding the full staffing that we had been working on all year to absorb the persistent inflation that we continue to talk about, continue the reliability programs that we ramped up this year, such as tree trimming, overhead line management, gas leak repair, and corrosion control, which are just a few examples of the areas we put investment in this year and are going to continue to put investment in next year with this budget. So slide 6 here just reinforces what I said earlier and gives a different view of the different O&M spending buckets. But you can see here this O&M budget supports the key areas and strategic initiatives that we've been talking about all year. So I won't read the whole slide to you, but it's a typical way we've sliced the different areas of spend for O&M. Okay, so on the next slide is part 2 of what is being asked for approval, and that's our capital plan. So again, this slide's got a little more context on what I said at the beginning, which was we are recommending a slightly larger capital plan than we had planned for back during the rate case. And I also show, as you can see, on the left-hand side where we are today, which we're tracking a little bit less. But here's the real story on capital, and that's really the difference between transmission spend and non-transmission spend. Now, in the past, we really haven't shown the difference, but it's becoming more prominent. So I wanted to give context as we approve the budget on the capital side. You know, the primary focus, I think, of the board should really be on that non-transmission spend, because that's the spend that is funded through our base rates. And when you look at the non-transmission spend for this year in the blue, you can see how much higher than planned at $698 million versus the 619. And that is primarily from more actual growth physically showing up in our community that needs connecting, and the inflation relative to the equipment and the materials and labor needed to hook up these customers and developments and so forth. So as we look to next year, on the right-hand side, we took those trends that we're seeing on non-transmission capital and kind of extrapolated that to this fiscal 24 proposed budget. So you can see that fiscal 24 has a notable increase in the non-transmission spend as we expect to continue customer growth and sustained inflation working through our supply chains. And in contrast, what you see is the transmission spend, which is different funding that we get through the state of Texas, is going down. And you can see this past year, the actual spend was lower in blue for transmission spend. And so similarly, we take that, extrapolate that trend for fiscal 24 on the far right-hand side. So what you're really seeing is the net of these considerations is what you get for the $941 million. And that really is the Cliff Notes version of the story here, which is slightly more in-depth than O&M, but not too much more. And same story in terms of the setup of this slide. This is just a different way to bucketize the different areas of where we're spending our capital dollars. But again, it's all the areas that we've talked about strategically, investing in our infrastructure, growth, our system, civic improvements, to keep up with all the construction you've seen across the city. We're a large part of those efforts and that work. So given those are the two items that we're going to ask the board to vote on, we also recognize that there are other forecast assumptions and considerations that may impact our revenue and expenses that are on our team's radar, and they're noted here for you on the slide. Ultimately, we've discussed at length the issue around accounts receivables and past due, and I think Deanna hit that on pretty well, but it is on our radar, and we partner with her team. The generation planning discussions that we've been going through, we spent several months with the Rate Advisory Committee. Part of the activity that we are going to be doing now that has been approved, Portfolio 2, is sharpen our pencils. And as we look forward to fiscal 25 and beyond, we will incorporate any type of requirements for meeting that plan into any future rate cases. One thing to note is that as you look over the P2 spend, the first 3 years of that spend is pretty minimal in terms of the heavy investment. It's not until years 4 and beyond where you start seeing the heavy lift of all those big dollars that you had seen during that discussion. And then rate design, we've talked about this at length. This is a process we're going to start with the Rate Advisory Committee beginning in February. This was an action item that we had talked about during our last rate case, and it is really here that we can get into that conversation about what our different customers and different groups can really pay and what they can afford. And in part, I think those are some of the discussions when asked, what's the bill impact for this customer or that customer? I think we work out some of those conversations with the Rate Advisory Committee and the board over the course of this year. So more to come, TBD on that. And then, of course, the disputed fuel costs from Winter Storm Uri continue to be out there. Again, it is an item and TBD on resolution, but we have passed the regulatory asset last year, which will provide for recovery of those dollars, whatever they may end up being resolved to be over that 25-year window. And as Rudy mentioned, the market design element is also an item for additional consideration, but more work to come on that. Okay, so the next slide here, the top of this slide, slide 10, gives you a view of our expectations on the overall financial health for the next year. So while the ask from the board here is simply on the expense side of the equation, these metrics take into consideration both the revenue and the expense assumptions, and I'll share them for context, of course. I think the important thing to recall from our discussions last year during the last rate case was that during that multi-year plan that we had put forward over that 5-year window, year 2 of that window, which is our upcoming year, was always going to be the most financially stressed during that span of time. And so what you see metric-wise on the screen is directionally consistent with that plan and that conversation. And that's why I've called this upcoming budget really a bridge year to funding. This is also consistent with the rating agency's expectations of our budgets, and as such, they have given us the benefit of time to run our business this year and stick to our rate plan. This is also consistent with the conversations we had with our financial advisors as they've worked with us over the last year plus on this plan. And what you can see at the end of the day on the top 3 lines there is that our forecasted metrics continue to be acceptable relative to the thresholds where we have historically been. You do see them slightly more stressed on the coverage ratio and the debt cap perspective, and that's highlighted with a slightly lower coverage ratio of 1.62 instead of 6.7, and slightly higher debt cap of 62.6 instead of 62.3, and that's where you see the slight difference. I think from a days cash on hand perspective, we've continued to talk about that as an issue this year. I think 170 continues to be, I would say, a stretch goal for us, but I think it's worth leaving it out there as our goal. The conversation that Deanna had around installment plans and all the work she has done has been communicated and baked into where we think that forecast will look next year as well. So this is our best forecast going into next year from those 3 metrics. In orange, you see the 2 items that are specifically asked for vote. I just highlighted those. We talked about them at length. The R&R fund additions are still strong at $289 million, a little lower than what we had forecast in the model, but you're still looking at close to $1 billion in unrestricted cash at the end of that year as well. And for context, we're probably around $950 million right now. So similar, but a little bit better. The only thing lastly to probably note is we put net income on here. I want to point out one thing about net income. Net income is not one of the metrics that the rating agencies focus in on. It is the top 3 that they focus in on. Net income is a headline type of number that folks, obviously gravitate to, but there are non-cash items flowing through net income. As our business and the way we are set up, we are measured on the flow of funds, and liquidity is, and how we spend those funds relative to our bond ordinance are much bigger focus, not just for CPS, but how similar municipalities are set up. So while it's still an indicator of how we are doing, that's the context on that. And it's not unprecedented to go into a year with a forecasted negative net income. I will have you note that the year prior to our last rate increase, we actually brought forward a budget that forecasted a negative net income. So it is indicative of a bridge year in the future, needing to have funding requirements. Anyways, wanted to give context on that number. So the very last slide is the actual request for approval. And just to sum up, I'm requesting your approval for both the fiscal 24 capital and the O&M targets that you see there that are going to fund our multi-year plan that we presented last year. And this budget supports all the things that we've talked about, the investment in the strategic areas of reliability, technology, our people and the related employee benefits, the community growth, and the supporting civic improvements are all captured within those dollars. And like I said, consistent with the conversations we've had with our financial advisors along the way. So I will pause there, Chair Dr. Mackey, and allow you to discuss.
Okay, first of all, I'd like to get a motion to approve the budget. You have a motion?
Motion to approve the
Motion by
budget.
trustee Gonzalez,
Second.
second by trustee Romero. Okay, are there any discussions or comment for Mr. Kaczynski? Okay, Mr. Steen?
Thank you, Dr. Mackey. Mr. Kaczynski, thanks for conferring with me twice about the fiscal year 2024 budget. And I do want to say I'm always impressed by your grasp of the subject matter. If we could put up slide 10, and what I want to address is the so-called bottom line, which is net income. And the fiscal year 2023 forecast, we're about to end fiscal year 2023, shows net income of $51 million. And the fiscal year 2024 plan, which we're being asked to approve today, shows a net loss of $21 million. It is a loss, yeah.
The 21 million would be a loss, yes.
It is a loss, so you hear the CFO.
Yeah.
It's in parentheses, and so that means a loss. For those used to looking at business financials, budgeting or planning for a net loss would be a red flag. That's because in the for-profit world, net income is an all-inclusive metric for profitability and provides insight into how well the management team under the strategic and operational leadership of the CEO runs all aspects of the business. In short, it's a convenient measure of how successfully a company is being managed. So in the business world, planning for a net loss would be unacceptable. Aggressively cut your cost or whatever you need to do, but don't budget or plan for a net loss. However, in our conversations, Mr. Kaczynski, you've maintained that an issue that can get in the way of understanding a municipally owned utility's bottom line is non-cash depreciation. So if one reviews not-for-profit financials, one finds many successful and prudently managed nonprofits have negative total net income year after year due entirely to significant non-cash depreciation expenses. In short, depreciation can dramatically overstate expenses. So if that's the case, why aren't you showing us on this page the net income before depreciation figures instead of or in addition to the net income?
I mean, we could show you that, but I would say baked into the metrics that we have on the top part of the slide, we back out depreciation expense where necessary as well to focus on the flow of funds.
Well, here's a key question for me as you're asking me to vote on this today. Does the anticipated fiscal year 2024 depreciation exceed $21 million?
Yes, it does.
It does. So I think I'm helping you here, which is I think that if people understood that if you pulled out these non-cash expenses, we'd be looking at a different number.
That's true.
Well, can you tell me what the number would be rather than a negative $21 million? What would it be if you pulled out the, and by the way, aren't there additional non-cash expenses? You mentioned in our conversation about having to market some bonds and
I did, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, depreciation for the fiscal year coming up is $535 million. So it's significant to your point. And then the other non-cash item that was flowing through this year's financials that we talked about was our holdings of fixed income investment. As interest rates have gone up, the mark-to-market value of those assets have moved such that we've recognized a negative expense on our income statement. It's a GASB expense. But to our discussion, those are investments we hold till maturity. So, if I've got, 4% on whatever fixed income, I'm holding it for X number of years. That's a non-cash expense, and it's actually, to your point, it's noted in almost all my memos that I've posted online, just explaining how we're doing year end. But yeah, the bigger one that we talked about was depreciation expense, and it's quite significant, $535 million for next year.
So you're saying that if you put up a figure, not net income, but net income before depreciation, it'd be how much?
So 535 minus 21.
So
500 plus million, yeah.
That would be our net income?
Yeah.
All right. All right, I think you've satisfied me on that. Okay. The other aspect of the fiscal year 2024 plan summary is the fact that we're being asked to approve a plan where the adjusted debt service coverage ratio, and that is one of the big three metrics watched closely by our credit rating agencies, is being raised from 61.7 to 62.6. And the threshold is 60%, and the lower the better, so we're headed in the wrong direction. And I guess I would like an explanation of why you're wanting us to plan for this key metric to get worse?
I think it is a reflection of the capital budget needing to be a little bit higher and thus borrowing a little bit more, and us balancing the operational needs and investment that our community needs that we've talked about, and still staying directionally consistent with the 5-year plan that we put forward. And I think the key point to answering that question is, as we showed our 5-year plan last year to the community, the board, and the rating agencies, fiscal '24 was always going to be our most stressed year. And to come in, 3 ticks a little bit higher from a forecast perspective on this metric, I think is reasonable. And in the conversations we had at the rating agencies earlier in January, they saw this and we showed them this. And, to Rudy's point, Fitch went to credit committee, and knowing all of this, they still reaffirmed our AA minus negative rating. So what I tell you is what we're trying to do is balance everything. We're trying to balance the investment in the community, balance the timing of the rate increases that we need. And in this instance, it required a little bit higher tick on borrowing. I think that's reasonable. I would argue we could probably push it to 62.9 next year, as long as that we come in with our a rate request, whatever the amount is, and stay on plan. I think the biggest thing, numbers aside, is that we demonstrate as a board and as an organization and community continued investment into our resources and the plan that we've discussed. So maybe a little bit more context, but hopefully that helps.
Well, I don't think that my vote's going to affect the outcome, but I have a problem with the situation we're in now of voting for a budget where we're planning for our debt capitalization ratio to go in the wrong direction. So I may be voting, I will be voting against the budget.
Okay.
Trustee Romero?
I want to go back to slide number 7. When you were talking about some of the growth in the community and how that impacted the non-transmission capital costs. Mm-hmm. So is it that CPS Energy really needs to is just completely reactive to new growth? I mean, is that a factor and is there anything we can do to change that so that we can better anticipate? I know it's not like with SAWS where I think they have to ask for water service agreements much earlier in time. That's not the case with us, but even with the supply chain, it just seems like we're just reacting to this boom, and I wondered if there's a way we can anticipate it better.
So we've been, over the last probably 5 years, one of the highest growth communities in the country. Last year, we were the highest growth, per capita community in the country. When you, in the utility industry, when you're singly certified, if they show up, you have an obligation to serve, or they take your certification away. So we don't have the authority to say no when somebody shows up, want to build whatever, new house, new business. And historically, we have kept that growth number consistent, knowing it was going to be higher than that. And this year, Corey helped me with the number, but I think it's close to $80–90 million more than what we expected it to be.
Yeah, on the non-transmission side for growth, I believe it's 80 on the dot, right? Yeah, 80 million.
So we try to moderate a conservative view of the world that maybe next year is not going to be as high growth, while continuing to build in some additional growth that we know is going to come. And even with the supply chain challenges that we've been having, the growth's not slowing down. They're still doing the land work. They're still preparing the lots. They're still asking, for service, even if they know they're going to have to wait for transformers. So I'd like to sit here and tell you, maybe next year will be a lower growth year, but that has not materialized. And until we see a couple of years of trends, that reflect that, then that will show up. There will be a reconciliation at some point in the budget process. But I would rather, be in the situation of baking it in and asking you for it, and planning to it, than undercutting it. We know the growth is coming because we see all the projects that are on the books.
Yeah, I get that. I appreciate that. I just wondered if there's maybe a better way to work with the city to know more precisely what that's going to be in the future?
I would tell you, we actually worked with the city staff a lot during the rate case, and we debated this number quite a bit, actually, with them. And, we had a large number in there for growth. It just came in even larger. And we were both on the same page at the time of the rate case. And then what wasn't, fully baked in there was how sustained inflation would be, and that wasn't really baked into Deanna's budget. I'm pointing at Deanna because her team manages that growth. So those two factors, I wouldn't say we weren't aligned, 15 months ago. Come fast forward now, and we've seen what we've seen. I think we meet with them every month, as we've talked about. I think we're aligned going forward on this, and we will be as we, continue to stay in touch month after month. But to Rudy's point, I mean, we have an obligation to serve, and these aren't things you say no to because we have to do it. So I hear your point, though. It's also tough when you're managing the budget, too, and it shows up that way. So I understand, Dr. Romero.
Yeah, I just want to clarify, I'm not saying you should say no. I'm just,
Yeah.
we need to know how many people we're going to have to say yes to.
Understood.
But thank you.
Sure.
But in fairness, that's a good way to address the budget shortfall. There's only two ways to balance your budget. You cut expenses or it's net growth.
Yes.
I mean, it's really simple. You gain more customers. And at the end of the day, my comments are really simple. I mean, I don't care what company, even if you have fixed billing arrangements, utility costs will fluctuate, both because of internal and external factors. Just like Yuri and just like Mr. Steen just pointed out, we have legislation that will impact that. That has nothing to do with a winter storm event. It has to do with policy. In addition to that, I mean, at the end of the day, what I hear over and over and over for additional people who participate in public speaking is that we need to have the capacity to handle the demand throughout the day. And at the end of the day, it's safety. If we don't provide products and services that keep our communities safe, that maintain that demand, then again, why do we exist? In addition to that, we're asking to modernize the grid. We're also being asked by the public who's here today to maintain the current operations that we have, right? And again, how do we do all these things? The only way we're going to do that as governance is to hear you month to month, hear the public month to month, and make adjustments as needed. We don't always do them as fast as we would like we do in private sector, but the whole world right now is laying off people. And that is because the whole world right now is trying to correct itself to address inflation. We're no different as a public utility company. So therefore, those of you who continue to participate, I appreciate it, whether we agree or not. But at the end of the day, collectively, we will find a way to get out of this as a country, as a city, and as a state, and as a municipality. So thank you.
Mayor.
The only thing I would like to add, we talked a little bit about this, Corey, when you briefed me on the budget, was if we can get, I think this would help settle some of the nerves as well, but if we can get a 2-year picture forecast for 25 and perhaps even in 26 and 27 as we go through our budget process annually, I think we can better see how those trends are moving. Because obviously, debt to capitalization is something we've been working on. It was a big part of the rate request conversation. We knew that it was going to be a stressful period in the coming fiscal year, but that's a trend that will improve as we move further into our capital program. So I think just a broader view rather than just a very hyper-focused snapshot on one annual plan to the next might be helpful for everybody.
And if I can add to the mayor's comments, I think that's excellent. That would allow us a forecast so that we can prioritize capital projects and get additional community feedback on those things.
Yeah, I think that's great feedback. What I would tell you is the view that we had did lay that out. However, I did not show it because we do want to take this spring and take into all the considerations around gym planning. So fair point, and what I'd say is as we do the monthly LE process, let me bring that back to you so you can kind of see the view, and it'll kind of be a precursor as we go into the fall and winter.
And Corey, we maintain a 5-year financial plan, and Corey updates that, whenever necessary. So we'll provide that view to the board as well going forward.
Yeah.
Okay. Corey, did you get a chance to brief every board member concerning the budget?
I did. Trustee Gonzalez and I did phone tagging, and then I know Rudy got to talk to her. But
He tried, by the way. I had four trips, 4 days, three time zones, and so we could not make it work. But I did get a personal briefing from the CEO.
Yes.
Okay. And you had reviewed this with the credit rating agencies? The same information?
Yes, we had reviewed this plan with them and our financial advisors as well.
And, okay.
And with the city staff, mind you.
And with the city staff too?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay, good. Thank you. Ms. Ramirez?
Yes, sir, we have a motion and a second, so I will now call roll for the vote. Vice Chair Gonzalez? The motion was to approve the budget.
Yes.
Trustee Steen?
No.
Mayor? Yes. Trustee Romero?
Yes.
Chair Dr. Mackey?
Yes.
4-1, motion carries.
Thank you.
Budget's approved.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have another item, and it's the item number 13, election of new Board of Trustees Chair and Vice Chair. As I prepare to transition from Board Chair to Board Member, I want this moment to thank the Board and the community for the opportunity to serve Chair for the last 2 years. It has been an absolute pleasure to serve as the Board Member and as the Chair. Once again, thank you for allowing me to preside as the Chair and join me in wishing the next Chair and Vice Chair. At this time, I'm recommending Janie Gonzalez as the Chair and Trustee Ramirez as the Vice Chair. That's my motion. Do I have a second?
And just to clarify, sir, this is you speaking as the representative of the nominations.
Nomination and the Personnel Committee.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
And that would be Chair Gonzalez, Vice Chair Romero.
yes, correct.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion?
Make a couple comments. Can I make a couple?
Yes, Mayor.
Well, I said this to Rudy as he was accepting the position of CEO. Dr. Mackey, you came on at a time and chose to chair this board, probably at the most difficult period of time this organization has ever had, a period of great instability and uncertainty. And I just want to compliment you on getting the ship settled and us moving forward on solid footing. The award nomination that you recognize, Rudy, from the Business Journal about being one of the best employers in town. My conversations about CPS outside of San Antonio, when I go to other cities or in DC, is still that CPS as a public utility remains the gold standard of municipal electric utilities across the country. We've all been through challenges, especially Texas utilities, and this one included. But that reflection, that award is a reflection, Rudy, not only of your solid team, the staff, the professional staff, but also good governance. And I give you credit, Dr. Mackey, for getting us back on track. We've got a lot of work to do, but I think we're headed in the right direction. So thank you very much for chairing.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. It has been an absolute pleasure to work for the last 10, 11 months or 12 months, a little bit more with Mr. Garza. He has shown some true leadership. He's growing in this new position, and it's been a pleasure. And it's a pleasure to be able to see Trustee Gonzalez and Trustee Romero take over as Chair and Vice Chair. They have my full support and always doing the right things for this company. And I want to thank you all again. So we have a recommendation by me and a second by the mayor. We're going to do the roll call.
Vice Chair Gonzalez?
Yes.
Trustee Steen?
Yes.
Mayor?
Yes.
Trustee Romero?
Yes.
Chair Dr. Mackey?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Look forward to that. And we have the last item, which
Mr.
is
Chairman, before we go on, I just wanted to remind the board and the public that after the next board meeting, which will be Chair Gonzalez's first board meeting, we're going to have a reception recognizing our outgoing chairman and our incoming chair and vice chair for their leadership. And so I just wanted to make note of that.
we're looking forward to our next board meeting, and I could be sitting in Ms. Gonzalez's chair.
You can stay there.
Yeah.
You're the target.
Looking
You can
forward
stay
to,
there.
Looking forward to working with our next chair and vice chair. So it'll be a pleasure. Next order of business is number 14, adjournment. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. We have a second? Second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Motion carries. Meeting's adjourned. Thank you all. Madam Chairman, next.